everyone that is here to be here, parents and students. As I was saying to the Schwabs as they're walking, I mean, if we're honest, the parents have to give a decent amount of information with us. The bad part is that everybody has to have their own account when it comes to FAFSA. Parents have theirs, and they need that tax information, but students have to have their own. So it's good everybody kind of understands how this works. Even if you've been through before, things change all the time with this. When people say, you know, here's your financial aid, and I know we'll talk about this, that does not mean what it meant in the late 90s or even early 2000s. It's not, here's just money, you don't have to pay anything back. Financial aid, it's a package, and it's good to understand all that terminology and how that's going to work. It's also important because seniors, really all the information is going to come to you, especially next year. Okay? The government will not follow up with your parents, they'll follow up with you. And you have to make sure you stay on top of this, otherwise you could potentially be forfeiting money, things like that. So I mentioned it to you seniors when we talked about transcripts, but I know it might sound like a somewhat dorky Christmas present, but you need to ask for a metal filing cabinet for Christmas. Or a fireproof safe, just a little one. And the one thing you need to put in there now is your transcript. You need to have that. Okay? I've had people call from 1957 and ask for their graduation transcript to prove that they graduated because they need it for a job. So you need to have a copy of that. You need to have your Social Security card eventually as you move out, so make sure you might have a copy of that. This FAFSA information, when you sign up for an account, you need. It's yours for life. I went back to grad school. I had applied for FAFSA once in 2000. Then in 2017, I went back to school. I didn't know what it was. Thankfully, you could kind of retrieve it, but you might need that information later on in life, so make sure you remember that. And then it's just important information you have to have. So this evening, as we have two people from MLC speaking to us about FAFSA, please give them your attention. If you have questions, though, please ask them. I also know that we have the families from LPS potentially joining in virtually. If they have questions too, we might ask those. We will ask them, but if they do, they're going to type them in, and then I'll let them know what those questions are. 45 minutes in, though, we're going to divide, and there's going to be a section for the parents. Seniors, you're going to go into the band room because we have a lady here from Saginaw Foundation who will help you understand where you can get some scholarships from. Maybe not Saginaw, but in your county, in your state, but also some writing tips of things to do and not do when it comes to applying for scholarships. So with that, I will let the MLC reps go ahead and they can introduce themselves. So thank you very much.
Hi, thanks everyone for being here.
You gotta turn the mic up.
Is this on? Okay. Excellent. Thanks for being here. So we are from MLC. My name is Joellen Crone. I am the Financial Wellness Coordinator on campus. So I do a lot of financial trainings, workshops. I also teach a really fun math class. It's organizational and personal finance. So if you come to MLC and are afraid of math, you will probably be in my math class, and it's fun math. So that is a little bit of who I am. That's my family. We all drove here with our camper and our dog from Minnesota. So they're out at a park running around somewhere. So this is, I think, year 8-ish maybe coming to MLS for these similar presentations.
Hi, my name is Amber Barklow. I'm the financial wellness trainer on MLC's campus. So my job is to go out to high schools like this and help out families and meet individually one-on-one any questions you might have to try and make this whole process a lot easier. I know that if you ever need a video, wherever you decide to go, if you need a video call one-on-one just to work through the FAFSA, that's part of my job. That's what I'm here for. I actually traveled from Ohio today. So she was coming from Minnesota, and I flew in from Ohio from a family reunion to come be here with you guys today. Up there you can see my family, and I was an MLC graduate back in December of 2021. And oddly enough, Joellen was the one who introduced this job opportunity to me and couldn't turn it down. So it's nice to be here with everybody.
All right. Get my mic back on. All right, here we go. All right, so the FAFSA. So any of you have you done this already once before? Any parents out there? A couple hands. Okay, so then this might be a refresher. For those of you that it's new for you, we're going to go through kind of the nuts and bolts because it can be overwhelming. You've probably all heard horror stories like, it took me 5 hours to complete the FAFSA. It's not that bad if you know kind of what you need to have ready before you apply. All right, so where you will begin, this is what the actual website looks like. It's studentaid.gov. Everything goes through this website. And as you heard, everyone needs their own account. So students, you have your FSA ID, and parent, only one parent needs to have one as well. You can both have one, but really only one parent needs to sign off on the FAFSA. So students, this is your signature. It's your legal, it's bound to you, your social security number, your birth date. So you need to know what this information is. So please be active in setting it up because sometimes what happens? Ooh.
We'll have a meeting and set it up.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Because sometimes parents think you might be, oh, I'll help you out. And then you're going to get to the part where you have to answer security questions and it's like, now you have your student trying to figure out who your best friend was and 20 years ago. So it's really a good idea for you guys to do it, and it sounds like that's going to take place, so that's great. So everyone is going to have this FSA User ID. Like I said, it is what goes through the Social Security Administration, and it says, this is who I am, this is my identity, and so it becomes your signature. For parents, you will use that same one for consecutive students. You don't have to get a new one each time, but students, that will be yours as the student, and then when you're older, as the parent, or grad school or whatever, it follows you because it is tied to your social security number. This is what we were just talking about. I'm going to go back a screen. So there's 2 options you'll see up there. Well, actually, there's 3. But I am a parent or I am a student. It is a very good idea for you to go through the FAFSA process with your student and follow the first option. Because if you're going to the bottom one, you have to manually key in things. And then sometimes what's happening is that social security numbers are getting transposed or a different child social is getting entered, and then we have a big problem on the college end. So it's a really good idea to follow that first step. I am a student. Have the student then log in after you set up that FSA User ID. Once you do that, like I said, it's tied to your social security number, so it'll be the student's information to access the form. All right, so you will start here and you'll say log in. And then once you put in that FSA User ID, it's gonna take you through some information before you get to the finances, like where do you live, what's your driver's license number. So there's gonna be demographic information. But the big thing that parents need to know is that it's gonna ask for your prior year taxes. So for next year, that will be 2021 tax information. They made this change a couple years ago because we were having problems with families that did extended tax returns and they'd push off the deadline and then they wouldn't have everything finalized and then they had to still do the FAFSA. So this makes things really streamlined, but it may not be accurate to what your current situation is, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So just keep in mind that when you're filling this out for next fall, you're actually going to use 2021 taxes, okay? They also made this change recently. You can actually pull your data in directly from the IRS. So it's going to ask parent financial information and student information. So did any of you guys file taxes, students, in 2021? Anyone know if you did or not? Couple hands. So if you as a student file taxes, you also will follow the same process. You can pull the tax information right into the FAFSA from the IRS so that you're not keying in the information from the tax return. So that makes it really handy. So a couple things to keep in mind with this. If you file separately, married separately, you can't pull your taxes in because the system is not sophisticated enough to know how to do addition. So you will have to manually add your tax information and then put it in. But if you file married jointly, you would be able to then have it go right into the system with the specific things. It's going to be like your adjusted gross income, taxes paid, things like that. Unfortunately, the one thing that it cannot do is that it doesn't know which income was for parent 1, which income was for parent 2. So you're still having to put that information. So even though you can use the data retrieval tool to pull that in, it's a really good idea to have a copy of your tax return with you so that you can know whose income was what, and it will just make things a little bit easier. So if you notice, again, this is going back to a previous year, but everything else is actually talking current. So it's going to ask information about your income, earnings, and assets. Now this is if you students had income over, if you're working part-time jobs, you have income over the summer, things like that, you will have data in your section under income and assets, right? Even if you didn't file taxes, you may have information here. But for parents, this can be a little overwhelming because it feels like they're asking for a lot of data, right? It's like, what's in our checking account? What's in our savings? If you would have like other property, you have a cabin, that's technically an asset, so that also gets included on the FAFSA. So that's the part of as the day you fill out the form. So this is the advice that we always give to families is be strategic, because maybe students, if you're saving up a lot of money and you're going to like buy a car or a laptop that's maybe a bigger one, and you have this money sitting in your account, you have to report it on the FAFSA, right, as money that you have available for school. Well, if that's already going for school expenses like a computer, you probably want to buy it before you do the FAFSA. Does that make sense? Because that otherwise then it's getting kind of negatively held against you twice, kind of. So if you have things that you specifically are planning on getting before you go to college, it may not be the worst thing for you to get that before you fill out the FAFSA. Otherwise, it's going to be looking like it's all this money is available for you to pay for school. For the parents, just keep in mind too that this does include 529 plans. Anyone out there have a 529 plan or a covered all account? So that is an asset for you. Even though it's in the student's name, they don't report it as an asset. The parent does, because you're the custodian of it. Or like a grandparent, if a grandparent has a 529 plan for you, that is their asset. It is not reported on the FAFSA. However, if there's a withdrawal from that, then it becomes on the next year's FAFSA. Then you would have some, it falls under the category income paid on your behalf, essentially. Then it becomes untaxed income for the student, but only once there's a withdrawal. Does that kind of make sense? Hopefully. Okay. There's some things that you are not going to include on the FAFSA. So if you have a small business, less than 100 employees, you live on a family farm and you operate it, that is not considered an asset. Retirement funds, not considered an asset. Life insurance, not considered an asset. That's a really big thing that people get confused on. And so when they start asking asset information, they're starting to put all these numbers, and we're like, are you sure that's not part of your retirement account? Well, you don't report that. It would be anything above and beyond that you're setting aside for savings, okay? I have this highlighted too, these question marks. They are throughout the entire FAFSA form. So this is a great way if you're like, I'm not really sure exactly what they're asking. Usually if you click on that question mark, it will clarify, but it is a governmental form, so the help may not be super helpful, but it should at least answer some of your basic questions. All right, sometimes we have situations where there's divorced parents and we get this question, which parent do we include on the FAFSA? So you include the parent that provides more than 50% of the support for that student. Typically, if you're in that situation, students, it's whose addresses do you have on your driver's license. That's usually the parent that would be on the FAFSA. The other note that gets people by surprise is if the parent is remarried, step-parent information must be included on the FAFSA, whether or not they're planning on helping you or not for college. That's just the rules of the government. If there would be a change in marital status, hopefully none of you are getting married this summer, but if you are, you would want to let the financial aid office know. This becomes something that we have to talk with our returning students, because a lot of times between junior and senior year, we have students that are getting married their junior year of college, and so we need to let them know, like, hey, don't fill out the FAFSA until after you've talked to us, because we might want you to wait, because there's some things that make it very difficult to try and change with the dependency status, which we'll go into. So if a parent is going to have some kind of change, marital status change, you should contact the school that your student's applying to, because they may say, hey, don't complete it until, even though you can start it as soon as October 1st, you might want to wait until after that change has taken place, because making adjustments to the form is a little bit cumbersome. All right, so this is another question that we get. Well, my student filed their own taxes. They filed as a dependent student. Doesn't that make them dependent on the FAFSA? No, it does not. So it does not matter if they file or don't file, if they live in an apartment the summer before college or not. They have to put parental information unless one of these very specific reasons takes place. So this is the only exception to the dependency question. So as you can see, it's usually by age, if you have a family of your own, military service, things like that. Otherwise, you would be a dependent. Another note, so students, when you are in college, usually it is better for you to still say dependent on your tax forms, because it's better for your parents to get that benefit of the education credits. It's not going to help you too much because you don't make a lot of income. You will probably still get a refund depending on how much you work. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind as far as that goes.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Did it change from 26 to 24 recently?
No, it's been 24 as long as I can remember. Yep. That's why if you're really worried about it, just take a few years off, wait it out, and then you can file on your own. Yes, as long as I can remember, it's always been 24. So you'll do all of this stuff online, right? You submit it, and then you get the results. It's called the student aid report. When I say you, the student, right? Whatever email you guys put, you get this report, and it shows everything that you've answered on the FAFSA. It will also show you your expected family contribution, which we will talk about. It also goes to all of the schools that you applied for. So you can put up to 10 schools on your application. So if you're not sure where you're going to apply, you don't even have to be accepted before you put that school on your FAFSA. There's a way for you to search by city, state, and then you can say, yep, that's the school, add them, and they will go onto that record. So up to 10 schools you can do. I've been asked this before, what do I do if I'm applying to like 12 different schools? Well, you'll have to do your FAFSA first with the first 10 schools, then you have to do a correction, take 2 schools off, add the other 2 schools, and you'll submit it again, essentially, so that all the schools are getting the same report. Does that make sense? Okay, so each school will get a copy of this. And so this will be a process, again, that happens electronically. Notice, so it says received in the mail. So sometimes we have families that have a little bit of a struggle with that whole FSA ID, and so what they do is they print off the FAFSA form, they sign it, and they physically mail it in. And now that instead of a 2 to 3 day turnaround, it's like 6 to 8 weeks. So do it online. If you have problems with the FSA ID or you have questions, give Amber or myself a call and we will help you through it, because that time delay is a killer. You don't want to wait that long. So you really want to submit it online. And so the other main point on this, if you notice on the do not make changes, and it's underlined, unless there's an error that you're like, oh, I looked at my student aid report and I put this number for investments, but it was retirement, so we should take it off. Yes, you can, I mean, if you made a mistake, please fix it. But otherwise, sometimes what's happening is that we're getting a record, we finalized everything, and then a change comes through, and then we're like, well, what's the correct information? So if you need to make changes or you're not sure, contact the school, and they will guide you through that process. So then, once you fill out that form, that will give you what's called the expected family contribution, which I think is on a slide coming up. One thing I also want to mention, you might have heard of verification. If you have already had a student go through this process, this may have been something that you've experienced. Verification is the process when either the government or the school that you're attending says, hey, we need to verify some of the data that you entered on the FAFSA. So for the governmental ones, they flag a certain number and they have certain criteria, which is very secretive. They don't even tell the financial aid office. But we'll get some kind of symbol and it will say, hey, this one you need to get additional documentation. It's not like you did anything wrong. This happens quite often. It's just the fact that for whatever reason, it set off a flag, and so now you have to submit actual data. Now, if you did the data retrieval tool, the nice thing is that you won't have to send in tax forms. They've already been verified through the IRS. Another reason to use that data retrieval tool. So you won't have to actually physically send us taxes. The caveat for that at MLC is this. If you are a called worker, we are still going to ask for your tax return because the IRS doesn't care about your housing allowance, and MLC unfortunately knows about this, so we have to make sure it's reported correctly, and that gets missed sometimes. So we're not trying to be meanies, but we just need to make sure it's accurate. So those are the cases at MLC that a lot of times it's like, yep, you use the data retrieval tool, but we still need to see the tax form so we can see the untaxed income and make sure housing is reported correctly. Sometimes it can be things as simple as just needing a copy of a W-2. It just depends on. But each school has different parameters, and so you could be selected for verification at one school but not the other. And that's normal just because schools set up their own parameters. The other thing is I mentioned that the tax year is 2 years prior. So things could have changed. Now, if you have gotten a pay increase, don't tell us. That's awesome. You don't have to report that change. But if in the last 2 years now your income is significantly less, then you need to let us know so we can do a manual adjustment. Okay, we can make special circumstances adjustments with proper documentation. If there's a loss of job, there's high medical bills, things like that, things that aren't representative of what happened in 2021 tax year, then you contact us and we'll work through what documents we need and we will make that change. At MLC specifically, we take into account tuition paid for younger siblings. So that has its own form, and actually the school has to sign off on how much tuition was paid. And once we get that form, then we can make an adjustment on the FAFSA. So if you notice, it has to be at least 1,500 before it makes a significant difference. But and it's in a calendar year, which is the other goofy thing, because that means 2 half school years for you that you've paid tuition. But there is a form on our website, and then you would just submit that. Now, if you're thinking of going to a different college, they may or may not take that into account. Some do, some do not. It is the school's choice of what things that they take into account, but MLC will definitely make an adjustment for that. All right, so I mentioned you fill out this FAFSA and you get this thing called the Expected Family Contribution, or EFC. Now, it sounds like expected family contribution. This is how much we are going to have to pay to go to school. That is not what this is. It's actually an index the government uses to determine your aid eligibility. So a lot of people will be like, well, my EFC says $19,000. I can't pay $19,000. It's not a number that demonstrates what you can or cannot afford to pay. It's an index used to determine aid. So the wording is bad. They're actually getting rid of that wording in the upcoming versions of the FAFSA to make it Student Aid Index, SAI, Student Aid Index. So they're going to be making that change to make it a little bit more clear as to what this is. But you can see there's a lot of things that go into that number. So it's looking at household size, adjusted gross income, who's in college, what kind of assets do you have in it, and it has this very complicated formula to spit out this number, right? So I'm going to show you an example using 4421. So 4,421 as the expected family contribution. I'm going to show you an example of what that might look like with an MLC financial aid award. That may or may not be where your family's at. It just kind of depends. But we're going to use that as an example. The other thing I want to make sure that you see too, notice, so the expected family contribution, that is the number that is the same whether you apply to MLC, to Michigan University. Is that what we did? Is that what the Trojans are? Yeah, Spartans. See, I don't even know. They have fancy hats. They look the same to me. Or WLC, right? The sticker number for these colleges are all different, but your expected family contribution is the same. So what does that mean? It means in the different columns, you could potentially be eligible for a higher amount of need-based aid. That is what this is showing you. So this is why I like to remind you that don't just decide not to apply to a school because of the sticker price. If that's where you are really wanting to go, of course we want you to come to MLC, but your gifts might be suited elsewhere, and that's perfectly fine. Just understand that you shouldn't say, oh, that school is $41,000 after my EFC, I can't afford that. They may have more scholarships, more grants, deeper pockets, right, to give you a little bit more aid. So that is what that is showing you. So the costs are going to be what the costs are at each of the schools. Your EFC is the same, but now your award eligibility, your need eligibility, is going to be greater the higher the sticker price is. Does that make sense? That doesn't mean they're going to fill it all with free money, but that does mean that your aid's going to be significantly different at these different schools, okay? So that's kind of how the expected family contribution, it just means that, okay, if I wanted to go to WLC, I physically can't receive more aid than $41,241 because then I'd be over what my demonstrated need is. I like to air quote that because we all could use 100%, right? So going back to the example, this is to show you how that expected family contribution might equate to a financial aid award. So this is a real life example of what a student who applies to MLC would receive if that was their expected family contribution. You can see the total need-based aid is $23,000 for the year. Now this includes need-based aid and grants and some outside aid that maybe the student receives. So I'm going to go to the next one and you can kind of see the breakdown. So if you notice, hopefully if you are considering MLC, hopefully you've heard of the Congregational Partner Grant Program. Yes, thank you for the very enthusiastic head nod. So this program is designed to have congregations also help support their students who are thinking of public ministry. So if they give up to $1,200, MLC will match $1,200, and now you instantly have $2,400 of need-based aid to go to MLC, okay? That number is increasing again for next year. Do you know the number? It's like 13 something? Yeah, something like that. So this is, once you receive aid, it's going to actually show up in whichever system, whatever school you go to. It's now part of your financial aid award, even if it's not necessarily coming directly from that institution. So that's another reason why I want to show you kind of what these look like. So you can see that this particular student received a presidential scholarship, which is above and beyond need-based aid. And then we have a distance grant. So depending on how far the mileage is from MLC, there's grants for that. And then some of the federal aid. So again, it's going to show you that total number is inclusive of all the aid that this student has so far. Now, if the student would get an outside scholarship for working from their company, that would get added onto their account, and by default, it would look like their award number would go up because it's still part of their aid. All right, so that was a lot of information just thrown at you. Well, any questions on that first section of information? Key takeaways, set up your FSA ID. Students, you'll do that. Here it sounds like, that's great. Parents will have their own, right? That is your signature. You will use it forever as far as financial aid and governmental aid goes. Yes?
For parents that filled this out back when this was black and white, like in the 90s, do we still have the same information?
You probably, that would have been back when they had a PIN. Do you remember having a PIN for that? No. Yes, kind of. Okay, well that's fine. So in that case, you will set up an FSA ID. Yep. Since you went through the process but didn't have this at that time, you will still need this. Yep, so everything's getting transitioned to this. Yep. Yes?
When you talk about the address they're supposed to go to, I think I remember one presenter from Myers Associates saying there's one almost exactly that's a site that's going to kind of scan you for information.
FAFSA.com was a thing. Yep, and so, but now they don't even have people going to anything FAFSA related. It's all studentaid.gov. You try to put in, like, it used to, then they changed it to FAFSA.gov, and that's when the scammers came out. They're like, oh, we'll do FAFSA.com. So it's now, everything is through studentaid.gov. If you're on that website, you know you'll be in the right place. Yes, thank you for that. Yes? So it depends on the school. Like our priority deadline is April 15th. So, I mean, it opens October, but we don't even have you do anything until April. It depends on the school. Because you might hear this too. Do it as soon as you can because funds will run out. Have you ever heard that? Anyone ever say that to you? Yeah. It's kind of true, kind of not true. If you qualify for federal or state grants, doesn't matter, as long as it's within the academic year that you apply, you are guaranteed those funds. But what could happen is priority for work study funds could be, like if you're going to a school and they say, do you want a work study job, but you don't fill out your FAFSA until after the deadline, you've just eliminated the opportunity to even have a federal work study job. So sometimes things like that. But otherwise, if you qualify for the need-based aid, they have to give it to you if it's federal or state. Now, institutional aid could also have deadlines. So MLC, we pretty much have said we have a priority deadline, but even if you do it, we still have kids that are there right now going to class who haven't gotten their FAFSA done. So you have until about May of your graduating year that you have to have it in if you want to be considered for aid, if that makes sense. So it's one of those hard questions because it's very institution driven. They might have differing rules. So just know what each school that you're looking at, what their requirements are. But otherwise, like a lot of schools, they open it up as soon as October 1st, but a lot of schools won't even touch them until January. Some won't even look at them until you've been accepted. So it just depends on. That's a great question, and the problem is it's a long, non-specific answer. Most everything, the joke in our office is, it's like everything is, it depends. Right? Any other questions? All right, we're going to transition to Amber, and she's going to actually talk through more the nuts and bolts of understanding that cost of attendance number, because it's really important to understand if you're looking at two schools side by side that you know what you're comparing. Oh, I thought it was an ear one. It's not.
If we could, while you guys are getting ready, seniors, if you guys want to get up, and if you are a dorm student, if you want to go grab your Chromebook, that would be good. Come back down to Andrew, okay, at 7:45. 7:45. Okay? So if you're, but seniors, you guys can leave in the restroom, but then at 7:45 we'll begin something Andrew.
The school was bigger. I don't know. I think you have a question. Oh, I remember her. Was it nursing? Did I meet you before? Yes, I remember. Yes, yeah, I remember meeting you. Yeah. She was talking about nursing or MLC. Yeah, of course. It was good to see you again. She was talking. They were here. Oh, we're good now. Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry, just if we could wrap it back in, take a few minutes to finish up your conversation. You can't hear it? I'm just not talking loud enough, am I? Hold on. I'll just talk louder. Oh, there we go. Is that better? Is that better? Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry. Just a reminder, my name is Amber Barklow. I'm the financial wellness trainer here for MLC's campus, and I'm going to go over a couple other things that we definitely need to talk about tonight. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the cost of attendance. Your cost of attendance is different depending on the college you go to. So I went to a college my first year. I went to Marion University in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. My cost of attendance at Marion compared to MLC was completely different. So I'm going to show a way for you to kind of break it down. Everyone knows, basketball brackets and things like that, so I thought that might be a pretty good visual to break things down. Your cost of attendance is different for every single student. So my cost of attendance could be different than your student's cost of attendance. That breaks down into two things, fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs are what your student get billed directly, so that is not going to change whatsoever. But your variable costs, you see how there's X's there, it's because that can be different depending on each kind of student. So at MLC, our fixed costs are $24,300, but our variable costs, I know it's $5,100. We set that number so high so that students can take out up to $29,400 in loans if they need to. The reason we also set it so high is because we have a lot of international students, and so if they need to take out loans for traveling back and forth, they're able to do so. But the nice part about the variable cost is it's not directly what you're going to be getting. So your variable costs are broken down into a couple things. I just did a really quick example. This was what it was for I just guessed, my freshman year, and I went on the high side of things. So when it came to my variable costs, when it came to travel, my car busted every single year. It was a Ford Focus 2010. It wasn't the most reliable, but it got me to A to B, so I didn't mind. But I did have to put into account how much gas it was going to be taking for me to go home. So I drove 6.5 hours one way. So I knew gas was going to have to come into it. Oil changes, rotating tires, and that stuff added up pretty quickly. Some students live 12 hours away, and some students live just down the street. So it's really going to depend on where your family is. When it came to books, $140 was my max that I spend on books. The reason being is because I didn't just go through the bookstore. The bookstore is very nice. You're able to rent them out or buy them. Otherwise, another option is I went through Amazon. We also have a Facebook, at least at MLC, we have a Facebook page that you can rent from other students. So that's another thing. When they're sophomores, reach out to your friends and see if they have a book and borrow it for the year. And I know I would rent books maybe $5 and they would be fine with it and I'd give it right back to them. So depending on books, it really just depends. Eating out, really didn't do too often, and this is just for an entire year, so maybe $200. Going to the grocery store, you're going to need shampoo and things like that. Something might break, but it really just is on how much your student needs to be doing those things. So again, your fixed cost is directly billed. That will not change, except for, every year you go to college, it does bump up a little bit. But your variable costs, it really depends on what you need. How to pay for college. This is probably the biggest question I get from every single parent or every single student when they're coming on campus or when they're wondering about their schools. There are 3 ways for paying for college. These are the 3 main ways: grants, scholarships, and loans. Grants are need-based aid. So that is based on the FAFSA and the EFC, what you just heard of from Joellen explaining to you. So for grants, you get a federal Pell Grant. This also is based on your FAFSA. It depends if you're eligible for your Pell Grant. I know when I went to college, my boss always says it the best, that my parents worked too hard for me to get any aid from the government, but I wouldn't have it any other way. My parents told me right away from the beginning, I paid for your schooling, you're on for college, and that is also a very good conversation to have with your kids, especially now, is have that conversation of, yes, I will help you this much, or no, you're on your own, or I'll pay for your groceries, I'll pay for your gas. Parents help in any way possible. Just having that conversation with your students is very important, with your children is very important. Scholarships. Scholarship to be merit-based, we call it the free money. That's another free money one. So scholarships, if you apply for them, or sometimes your colleges might reach out to you and say, hey, you're eligible for the scholarship, or the scholarship is available to you. Otherwise, merit-based scholarships, which I'll show you in the next slide, based on academics. The other one is loans, so that's borrowed money. This is money that has to be paid back with interest. So please do not forget that. The interest adds up very, very quickly. That was the only thing that I focused on when I was in college, is I paid off my interest. I knew that my loans were not going to change, but I at least tried to stay up with the interest because it can accrue very, very quickly.
The other thing to mention there too, and I think Amber goes to this, the best way to pay for anything, I always tell my students in class, is with actual money. So really optimizing the summers in between college years is so important, so that they can at least have a jump start on a certain amount that they physically can put towards their schooling.
Scholarships, the best, yes, sir, go ahead.
Question about that. I thought with those loans that they didn't come due until you were out of college.
That is correct.
Yes,
But the interest starts right away day one.
for unsubsidized loans, which I will explain in a couple other slides. No, I appreciate the questions, you're fine. Scholarships. Check whichever college or university that your student wants to attend. It really depends. Every single college is different. So check their website, and I'll show examples as well, but check their website under their scholarship page, and you can look through and read as much as possible. I trust personally the scholarships on the college page because you know they're coming from a good place, because they wouldn't just put that out there for you not to, that you're not able to trust it. And then your students are hearing from Michigan about other opportunities. MLC scholarships, so we're going to talk about merit, which is academic-based, endowed scholarships, so that would be needing an application. And then behind the scenes, I know I received a golf scholarship. I just got an email for it. One day I just got an email from the office and they're like, hey, you got a $1,000 scholarship, please send in a thank you note. And I said, okay, great, I appreciate it. It's $1,000 I don't have to work for during the summer. And it really did add up and help. My boss back at MLC says it the best. If you put 50 hours into applying for scholarships and you get $500 or $1,000 scholarship out of it, that's 50 hours that you didn't have to work. It really is worth it if you put in the effort. So this is the merit scholarship that I was talking about, where it's academic or GPA based. This will be changing this is just MLCs, but this will be changing. We're trying to give as much help to students as possible. So we're adjusting that at the moment, and hopefully that will be changing pretty soon.
Yeah, if you go back a screen, please.
Yeah.
If you notice right now, there's different qualifications for if you're in high school, and then to renew it in college. We think it's too clunky, so we're making it one thing, and we're probably gonna we're trying to increase the amount, and then also get people at different brackets of academics and still recognize that. So that's been something that we've been working hard to try to get changed. So next year this will be changing. We just don't have the published approval yet on what the new merit scale will look like.
These are just two examples of pages that you might be looking for. So we have MLCs, and then I also brought up Marquette in Milwaukee, their scholarship page and what it might look like. If you just go to the financial portion of the website, scholarships should pop up right away, and it should just be something to click. Yes, sir.
All these different universities and colleges should have something on their website to apply for these different, because I hear about apply for all that you can find. I gotta find them. That's how you do it, by looking at their application page.
I know at MLC we only put scholarships and loans and loan companies and things like that that we trust. So if I were, yes, go to their website and go to their financial page and then look for the scholarship opportunities. And I'm hoping that they have a list. I know if you go to, go ahead.
Just to clarify, like their own scholarships, yes, but a lot of colleges aren't posting outside organizations that have scholarships. They might post a link to a database, or like we have FAFSA and CAPEX on our website. You can sign up for an account, and then it's like a big database of scholarships, but we don't parse out all of the different opportunities because that would be, we would need a full-time person just to do that. So every institution should have a listing of their specific scholarships, and they might have resources for outside scholarships, but it would be as basic as like, here's an opportunity for you to sign up to find out more. Does that help answer your question?
More into paying for college, summer jobs, just.
Those are those online scholarships.
Yep, yeah, those. But summer work, as much as they can do during the year and during the summer, try as much as possible. I know some kids, college is your full-time job. You're supposed to be focusing on your schooling, and you're supposed to be focusing on your academics. That's their job. But if they are able to get a job, even working 10 to 20 hours, it really does make a difference, and it does help make those little payments, or helps with the grocery bill. Saving after graduation is really big. So the 529 plans, I know a couple people raise their hands that they do have those for their students, or maybe grandparents do. Student employment, again, working on campus is very important. I was an RA and a mini mama while I was on campus, and that paid for my room and board. And there was a lot of money that I didn't have to worry about, and it really does add up. And then college payment plans. But yes, this is the outside scholarships that we have on our website that you can go to. Another tip, do not pay to apply for a scholarship, if that makes sense. So if the scholarship is asking, hey, give us $50 to apply for this scholarship, well then if you don't win the scholarship, then you're out $50, if that makes, yeah, okay, perfect. Here are the loans that we're going to be talking about. So there are subsidized and unsubsidized loans. You can only get a max, you can only take out a max of $31,000. And this is the same for every student across the board. Subsidized loans, there's no interest starts racking up for that one, but for the unsubsidized loans, the interest does start accruing, once the loan is taken out right away. So for subsidized loans, it is need-based. It's need-based and not need-based. So what I'm trying to explain is that if you do not need the $3,500, it will just go into all unsubsidized loans.
So that's all
Yeah, please.
determined by your expected family contribution. So when you fill out the FAFSA, part of your financial aid at any school you attend will be governmental loans. Okay, and so your student might qualify for subsidized loans because that's a need-based portion of the loan. The unsubsidized loan is just available to any student who has completed a FAFSA, but there's limits. And so this chart is showing you the maximum limits per year and overall cumulative to get your undergraduate degree.
Do we have any questions on that? Because that can get a little confusing. Okay. Oh, actually, I do want to go back. So back to I know the question you had before. There is a 6-month grace period after graduation when it comes to start making payments on those. And for your students, you are responsible for your own college. Do not forget that. And you're.
And another point too on the loans. So the interest on the unsubsidized loan starts when the funds disperse. So it's not like it starts August 24th when school starts, because we don't disperse our loans until the middle of September. So interest on unsubsidized loans would start then. We're under this weird thing with loans right now that they're still on a COVID pause until January. So who knows if they just keep, we don't know. We don't know. But how it stands right now is in the regulations once the funds are dispersed. And loans are usually split by semester. So you get half for the fall, half for the spring. So of that $5,500, $2,750 is the max that you could have of unsubsidized loans, and it might start accumulating, so then it would accumulate interest around September, usually. Unless that financial aid office disperses it day one of class, but usually that's not the case, because they usually wait for the 10-day drop add period before they do any kind of loan anything. Now, private loans, which we're not really going to go into, but some families do take out private loans. The interest rate is higher. thank you, that's great clarification, yes, we should have mentioned that. Every year you do the FAFSA, because things can change behind the scenes.
And just like Joellen said, oh wait, do you have another question? Sorry. Do you have another question? Are we okay? Okay, perfect. Sorry, I thought you were looking at me for a question. I apologize. No, we just sat through a lot of new, this new September government thing. And so yes, everything is changing all the time. So please, if you have any questions, that's our biggest thing. Send us an email, send us a text, you know, just call the office, and we would love to sit through and help you through it. Okay. I'm gonna take a minute to take us to the MLC website, because you're probably wondering, okay, what do I do now? Give me 2 seconds. Does anyone have any questions while I'm trying to set this up?
Go ahead.
Just an encouragement, if you are a called worker sending a child to MLC with that housing allowance on your W-2, that's in a really oddball spot on the FAFSA. Call MLC to help you figure out where to put it and how to put it.
Yes, that is it. Thank you very much. Yes, it is clunky. So if you are a called worker, just call us and we'll tell you exactly, so that it will make things easier for the processing if we just do it right the first time. And usually, you know, after you've done it, now it'll be easier going forward, right?
So if you go out to our MLC page and you press under financial aid, what we're going to be talking about is planning for college. So you can scroll down, hover over admissions and aid, go to financial aid, and then you can press on planning for college. This is just a good tool no matter where you're going. So if you press high school, and oh, I'm so sorry. It's keeping up on here, it's not keeping up there. Mm-hmm. Let me make sure I might have to cast it again. Did it pop up? Okay. Let's see if it does it again. If it scoots over, does it? Nope. I know, right? I know. Is it back up now? Perfect. Okay. And now high school. Sorry, we're trying to just show you the college process, and there's a nice website to go out to. Is it working? Okay, now I go to high school. I know, I thought so too. It won't let me scroll. That's why I'm asking. I have a better idea. I'll go back to the present. Did it come back? No.
Technical difficulties, but there's a lot of good information on there. I just had a meeting in our kitchen with some friends of ours whose son is actually not even thinking about going to MLC. I think he's going into engineering. And I was able to show him our website, and it gave him so many helpful tools for just the college application process in general. So take advantage.
So you can go to the starting, the college process, it goes academic leadership. There's just so many good pieces of information out there. And then that brings up my next big piece of information. If you walked in, I know that you have the slides next to you. We also have a card. So what this card is it's all of our names. It's the financial aid team, and we're here to help. No matter what college, or if you decide to go into the military, or if you decide to go to a tech college, whatever your decision is, we're here to help, and that's the point. So we have our email down here, the website, and the phone number, and then on the back is very important, like really quick tips from tonight and things to remember. So if on your way out, if you could grab one of these and just stick it on your fridge, you know, it would actually be very, very beneficial, and I think it would be very helpful.
Especially the red link, it's Inceptia. They come out with this great advice for parents every year. They're updating it. That's what this QR code is. It takes you right to that publication, and it pretty much walks you through everything on their website. So it's an outside organization that does a lot of college education, and so it's like a whole pamphlet. It's actually like a booklet online, and that's what this is for. It's really helpful for parents to walk through.
Our next page is, again, if you have any questions, we have even this huge button that says, I need help, and you press it, you put in your email, and you send in your question, and we can answer it right away, and it will go to one of the 4 of us that's on our staff. And that's it. That's our team. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
You just said that even if they're looking at another college, they can call you for help.
Yes, sir. That's one of the reasons I was hired is we're trying to go to all of our high schools and just help prep parents and families and their students for college no matter where you're deciding to go. Because we just want to try and make the process easier, and our biggest thing is trying to help students take out as little loans as possible. So let's say you're making $30,000 your first job out of college. We're trying to help you keep that loan number under the $30,000 so it's manageable. I love my mother, but when she was going through the process with my brother when he went to his first school, he came out with a lot of loans, to say the least. But then when I came through it the second time, it was a lot easier for her. So we're just trying to tell you as much, it's a lot of information, but tell you as much information as possible so you're as prepared as you can be.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yes, sir.
What advice do you have for families who are trying to balance the idea of a child who wants experiences in the summer, say a mission trip or something like that, or working 2 jobs, or that aspect of things? If a kid really wants to work and they really want to get ahead financially so that they don't have to take out loans, that kind of thing, as a parent, I go, yeah. But then the flip side is this is the time where they can do things and experience the world a little bit. Is it going to hurt them if they are taking maybe the aspect that they want to work and pay for things? Is it going to hurt them financially wise?
So if they don't work as much is kind of what you're asking. If they don't work as much, it might help them. Or might.
Go to Africa and do the Central African Medical Mission thing.
My personal advice, I worked 4 jobs every single summer, and I always took off time to do things that I wanted to do. Because my dad said it best, if you're going to work for your money, you might as well use it. And also, a trip to Africa, when are you going to get that opportunity again? But that's my personal opinion. Of course, with your family, it's your decision. I would just say then they can work more during the school year, because opportunities like that only come around, maybe once in a blue moon, and they're going to be working the rest of their lives. But that's again my opinion, but you might have something different.
We have a lot of students in my class. I think I had 3 students who worked at Camp Phillips all summer. They loved it, but if I would prorate what I made per hour, it's like $2 an hour.
Yeah.
Right? But I feel like there's this balance. I would say you can't do all of those giving your time and stuff 4 summers in a row. You can't afford to do that. That would not also be a good steward of your ability to earn some income. But I think that you're going to have to find a balance. The other thing that's helpful to know is that MLC has a lot of daylight opportunities. And I think MLS does. I think do they do Titus or Timothy or Paul? They're do one of those.
Yeah.
Because Prep does one, yeah. So, so they have these opportunities, but you might have to pick your battle. So you're not going to be able to do it all. It's kind of like we were here, we're like, oh, we're going to go out to UP, and then we're going to spend all this time in Traverse City, and it's like, okay, we have to pick now the one thing we want to do because this part of Michigan is amazing. So it's no different. They're going to have to learn that balance, and I think that sometimes you have to sit down, and it's not fun, but you have to look at what can we afford to do. You don't want to have to think like that, but I think there's going to be other opportunities throughout the 4 years of college that they shouldn't have to make one decision in one summer. Do you know what I mean? So it is hard. It's really hard, but they are having to balance. Like I have one of our awesome football players. He's like, I don't know, after taking your class, I think I need to get a job next fall. And unfortunately for him, that meant no more sports. But that was the prudent decision for him to make at that time. He got his 1 year of experience, and maybe he can work and get back into it. But they are starting that journey of making hard decisions. But it's no different than us saying okay, we want our kids to be involved in an activity, or do we want a new kitchen stove? they're just starting these processes a lot younger.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the average interest rate on a student loan?
Can you say that again? I'm so sorry.
What's the average interest rate on a student loan? What are you looking at paying?
4? Yeah.
is this year's. Now there's talk. Loans are kind of like, that's my baby. Because I want to make sure that my students don't have more than they
Yep.
can afford to pay. They're talking about setting the federal rate without the extra. Right now it's like based on the treasury plus a little bit. So they're trying to cap it. So I would say it teeters around 5. The last 2 years is like 2.75 and 3.25. So it's been lower than that. But right now it's 4.99. I think that if you're talking private student loans, a decent average on those would be like 8 to 9, which is like, I know, it's not good.
But if you're seeing a loan with, 14% interest
Yeah,
rate,
right.
keep looking. Like, I wouldn't even waste your time. Sorry.
Unfortunately, I had a student who I'm like going through after, so I meet with the seniors before they graduate, and we go through what are your total loans, what is an actual budget going to look like for you when you're out on your own. So we do all of these examples, and they walk away, and then some. But one time I'm like, why did you never take out your federal loans? Well, I don't know. My dad said I should take out this one. He's sitting at an 8% interest rate, and he could have had a 2.75 at least for a chunk of that. So, that's why we're really, really trying to make sure that the education is there.
Again, that's part of my job. Reach out, just ask questions over and over again. I'll never get tired of them, I promise. And if I don't know, Val up there has been working 25 plus years. She is the lady of knowledge, and she knows everything about everything. She's so sweet and kind. Mark, I think he's at 8 years. I know Joellen is 15 plus in the financial world, I would say. So we have a lot of knowledge between the 4 of us, for sure. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
On the tail end of pastors, forgive me if this doesn't make sense, but so when he was saying about not working on a summer, say they're on a mission trip, can that have an effect on any award they might get for the next coming year when they're trying to get some of this help from paying for school? I guess is what I was thinking is, do they look at that? How much were they working? What are they doing towards paying for school versus?
I do, but
Yeah.
as far as that goes, I feel like the only thing that's getting reported is their tax return and what they have in savings. So no one's going to say, what are you contributing or what are you not contributing? Everything for need-based aid is boiled down to the FAFSA, what they're putting on the FAFSA. No other factors really are part of that.
Yes, sir.
Kind of along the line with your buy the car computer first, it was suggested to me that perhaps if your student has a large amount of money, that it might be better if that money found a home in the parent account rather than a student account.
Younger sibling would be even better, but
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yes, sir.
On that logic, it would actually be worse if the student was working and actually had an income on the balance.
Well, see, and that's the hard part. It's like sometimes you're like, well, we actually had a whole email
Yep.
debate, if you will, with the families. It was like, well, my son has worked this hard over the summer, and now he's getting penalized. And it is very frustrating because I as a person totally agree. So in some sense, you're right. So like sometimes it's actually disadvantage for the student to have earnings. So it's a mess.
So I know, like it says, you work hard, great job. They're wearing
that data for what it is.
Do they take into account debt? Like I busted my tail to just about pay my house off. Now I'll be penalized because I don't owe that much on it. So should I
They
just
don't look at mortgages at all anyways.
Okay.
So that wouldn't really be a factor.
Okay, thank you.
But Dave Ramsey and I are very proud of you.
Any other questions? Again, this is all of our information if you need to take a picture of it. Otherwise, our cards are on the back. But
And just know, I mean, it can be frustrating because it feels lose-lose. But when it all boils down to it, we've run the numbers. Like having a degree, even a technical degree, having it's better than not having anything to, depending on what you're going to go into. And it is worth the investment. And my little ploy for MLC or wherever your student's going, they have the ability to be an ambassador and still be part of the Great Commission in whatever field that they're looking into. So if they're not going to a synodical school, this is just me being a mom and seeing what's happening in our world, make sure they are plugged into campus ministries. It is so essential that our young people have Jesus around them. Sorry, did I get emotional? I got a kindergartner and a preschooler, and I'm just like fearful of the world already. So just surround your kids with Jesus.
And that was one thing is there have been a lot of my old classmates in high school that have come to me and said, I'm trying to go back for my degree and it's impossible. Because once you're out of a classroom for 4 or 5 years, it's really hard to get back into it, especially when it comes to college and to get back into that routine. And I also agree with that. Going to a school that, Marion, wonderful college, but going to another school and then going to MLC and having chapel every day, it's very special. It really is. It's a special opportunity to be able to praise Jesus with all your brothers and sisters. That's just my little tidbit. Okay, I think that's all.
If you have anything else, we'll stick around for a bit and feel free to come and chat with us.
Thank you.
Just on behalf of all of us here at MLC Schools Online, I know there was one question that was posted. I think they were looking for the information on here. If you could get that to LPS, they would appreciate that. Thank you on behalf of all of us here at MLS. Yep, we wanted to give you this. And thanks for making the trip from Ohio, and so hopefully you enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's awesome, you guys. Michigan is amazing.
We don't call it Sagan awesome for nothing. So ask them whatever questions you have, please. They would be happy to help. Take one of these on the way out by Pastor Redberg there. He's going to do the Vanna White, show everybody what it is. So please take one.